One bag meets the hopper, and within seconds, routine handling sets off sudden chaos inside the mixer. Inside a processing plant, workers feed sack after sack into an open hopper, the chute leading straight into a vertical mixing drum. The routine looks ordinary: heave, empty, shake. Powder drifts in the air, clings to clothes, and coats the floor. The noise of machinery drowns the room, masking the danger only inches away. As another sack is lifted, it snags on the hopper's edge. In an instant, the load shifts off balance, and the chute draws it in with powerful force. Dust bursts upward, workers stumble back, and what looked like routine feeding suddenly exposes the unguarded pull of the mixer. Never feed a hopper or mixer directly by hand. Unguarded in-feed zones are killers, designed to pull in anything they touch. Workers must use safe feeding platforms, guards, and mechanical aids. One slip near an open mixer doesn't mean an injury, it means no chance at all. In a warehouse buzzing with activity, a worker steps where no one should, and in seconds, the machine shows why. The footage captures a worker sorting packages beside a long conveyor line. To most, the belt looks harmless, just rubber moving boxes down the line. But to safety experts, conveyors are known as one of the most dangerous tools in logistics, packed with hidden pinch points and relentless rollers. As the worker adjusts packages, he makes a critical move, stepping on to the moving conveyor. Almost instantly, the belt pulls forward beneath his feet, its momentum leaving no room for balance. What seemed like a harmless step turns into a stark reminder of why conveyors demand strict separation from foot traffic. Never ever step onto a moving conveyor. These belts are designed for freight, not people. Even at low speeds, rollers and pinch points can trap clothing or limbs before anyone can react. The only safe practice is clear ground rules. Stay off the belt, use designated walkways, and rely on emergency stops if something goes wrong. At a roadside repair, one tire under pressure unleashes a force that reaches beyond the worksite. The shop is alive with activity. Mechanics cluster near a heavy truck, inflating a large tire while tools scatter across the ground. To them, it's just another routine job. But inside the rubber, compressed air is quietly building. A few steps away, a woman passes with her child, walking close to the work zone without realizing the risk. Then, without warning, the tire gives way. Compressed air bursts free with a thunderous blast, rattling tools and sending dust swirling across the yard. The sudden shockwave sweeps through the space, rattling the surroundings and startling bystanders nearby. Workers react immediately, rushing through the haze to guide people away from the danger and restore calm to the site. Never, ever inflate a tire without protective cages or barriers. A single failure under pressure can project force across an entire area, endangering not just workers, but anyone nearby. In a busy workshop, one snap from above turns control into catastrophe. Inside the factory, heavy slabs are stacked and rigged to an overhead crane. The hoist lifts slowly, chains and cables straining under the massive weight. Overhead, the steel lines vibrate under stress as the load inches upward. The hum of machinery fills the air, masking the danger, building silently above. Without warning, the hoisting cables snap. The suspended load drops abruptly, sending vibrations through the floor. Dust rises and equipment rattles as the failed lift transforms routine work into sudden chaos. Never, ever trust a lift without proper cable inspection and load limits, because one snap is all it takes to bring everything down. Inside a busy warehouse, one wrong turn of a forklift turns routine movement into a sudden collapse. The warehouse is active, pallets stacked high and forklifts weaving between rows. Workers are focused on keeping the flow steady, maneuvering heavy loads through narrow aisles. Every second counts, but so does every movement. One forklift speeds in reverse with its forks raised. The weight tilts forward, the machine struggles for balance, and in seconds the entire forklift tips. Pallets scatter, equipment clatters, and the noise echoes across the floor as nearby workers rush toward the scene. Never ever speed with raised forks. A forklift can become unstable in an instant, and the weight it carries has the power to topple the entire machine. As the dump truck unloads, a single rock breaks free, and gravity turns it into a deadly strike from above. The truck tilts, spilling tons of heavy rock into the unloading bay. A worker stands close, reaching toward the steel gate as the material pours out. At first, it looks like a standard dump, the kind done countless times on construction sites. But among the sliding debris, one massive rock shifts loose. With nothing to stop it, the boulder drops straight from the raised bed. A worker is positioned directly beneath, and in a flash, the falling load transforms routine unloading into a sudden falling zone emergency. Never, ever stand under or beside the falling path of a dump truck's load. Gravity makes every rock a potential weapon. Always clear the unloading zone, guide only from a safe distance, and never rely on unstable piles to hold steady. A dump truck may carry material, but when raised, it carries risk. A single panel door opens and the room is torn apart by a sudden arc flash. The room is lined with electrical cabinets, breakers, and controls, each holding high-voltage circuits. Workers move through their tasks, one of them opening a panel to carry out routine checks. What looks ordinary masks the hidden reality of live power inside. A violent arc flash explodes outward, flooding the control room with light, fire, and smoke. The electrical blast surges across the space with searing heat, scattering sparks and throwing the area into chaos as workers scramble to respond. Never ever work on energized switchgear. One unseen fault can trigger an arc flash powerful enough to overwhelm the entire room. In a marble factory, towering stacks of stone rest on flimsy racks. One worker moves between them, unaware that the structure holding tons of weight is seconds from collapse. Marble tiles and slabs are heavy, unforgiving materials. To keep production moving, they're often stacked in bulk, bundled together in sheeting. In this factory, the stone is placed on makeshift racks, metal frames not designed to bear such enormous loads. The setup looks routine, but it's a complete trap. Unstable storage, no protective gear, and workers moving freely between hazards. As the worker bends to adjust something, the rack begins to give way. The weight is too much. In an instant, the structure buckles, and tons of slabs cascade down in a thunderous crash. The workspace vanishes beneath falling stone, turning routine movement into sudden chaos. Never, ever overload storage racks or allow workers into unsafe spaces between unstable loads. Heavy stone must always be stored with engineered supports, spacing barriers, and clear exclusion zones. Without structural integrity, any rack can fail, and once it does, human strength is no match for falling slabs. High above the skeleton of a rising building, one wrong step on unstable scaffolding sets disaster in motion. This was an ordinary day at a construction site where workers were reinforcing columns and placing boards for the next level. The structure was still raw, with gaps, open edges, and no guardrails. Scaffolding and temporary planks lined the edges, but they weren't secured, leaving dangerous spaces where one misstep could change everything. A worker moves across the edge, carrying out his tasks, but as he shifts his weight, the plank gives way. In an instant, the support collapses, leaving him with no lifeline, no harness, no net, and nowhere to stabilize. A single moment of instability reveals the full danger of working at height without protection. Never, ever allow work at heights without proper fall protection. Every edge must be secured. Every worker must be equipped with a harness. And safety nets should be mandatory where risks are this severe. In a textile mill, the steady spin of the rollers hides a danger waiting for just one wrong move. The factory floor hums with the steady spin of a sectional warping machine. Wide sheets of fabric feed across the rollers, winding layer after layer onto a massive drum. Workers stand nearby, guiding the material as it runs smoothly across the surface. To the eye, the motion looks controlled, but the rollers are relentless. Once something touches, they do not let go. One worker leans close to guide the material. His hand drifts too near the roller, and in a split second, the spinning surface catches. The machine pulls the fabric tighter, its momentum unyielding, while nearby co-workers scramble to shut it down. Never, ever place hands near moving rollers. Even the smallest contact point can trigger a pull, turning a moment of carelessness into a serious hazard. In an automated sheet line, one slip in suction turns precision into disorder. This is a sheet handling and stacking system built to move heavy panels without manual lifting. The gantry arm, fitted with vacuum pads, lowers onto a stack, grips, and slides the sheets across to the next conveyor. Rollers feed material forward, while the overhead unit organizes the load into neat stacks. The system runs smoothly, designed to keep production fast and controlled. During inspection, the energized line suddenly cycles, rollers engage, and the gantry slides forward, shifting the stacked panels with controlled force. Anything left inside the operating zone moves with the automation as it follows its programmed sequence. What appeared calm transforms instantly into hazardous motion. Never, ever inspect or enter an automated line without lockout, because when power flows, motion follows. At a construction site, one sharp tilt of a lift turns a routine task at height into sudden instability. The boom of a mobile elevating work platform stretches upward, carrying workers in a basket to the face of a tall building. From below, it looks steady, the arm holding firm against the gray sky. Teammates on the ground watch as the work continues, unaware that balance at this height can change in an instant. As the lift continues, its balance shifts. The boom jolts, rocking the basket sharply at height. In an instant, the workers lose their footing, swaying with the sudden motion. On the ground, teammates call out and move toward the base as the platform tips under the strain. Never, ever step into a lift without a secured safety harness. At height, one jolt can upset balance, and only proper restraint keeps workers inside the basket. On the workshop floor, the lathe spins with steady force. One loose thread is all it takes to trigger danger. The workshop is small, cluttered with tools and unfinished parts. A worker in a bright shirt leans over a lathe, the machine's motor humming steadily. The drum turns at high speed, pulling fabric across its surface with mechanical precision. Around the room, coworkers move in routine rhythm, unaware of how close risk sits in the quiet spin of the steel. As the worker adjusts his stance, his shirt brushes the spinning roller. In an instant, the fabric catches, yanked with sudden force. The machine pulls relentlessly, its steady spin turning a small mistake into an urgent emergency. Nearby coworkers react in alarm, rushing to hit the stop controls and bring the motion to a halt. Never, ever wear loose clothing around rotating machinery. Even a single thread can be enough for a roller to seize, creating a pull stronger than any reflex. In a chemical plant where pressure never rests, one sudden release turns routine into chaos. The floor is lined with reactors, valves, and thick pipes carrying volatile compounds. Workers in protective helmets move between stations, monitoring gauges and adjusting connections. The air is tense but quiet, with the hum of machinery in the background. Every system depends on strict containment to keep the energy under control. One worker leans over to make a quick adjustment near a valve. In that instant, a hidden buildup of pressure gives way. A sudden flash erupts from the pipeline, releasing energy across the platform. Nearby staff are jolted as alarms sound, the room filling with the roar of escaping gases. Never, ever open or adjust a pressurized line without full isolation pressure checks and emergency relief systems in place. In a storage yard, a massive steel coil breaks free, and once it starts rolling, nothing can hold it back. Steel coils weigh several tons, tightly wound and stacked for transport. On flat ground, they sit steady, but on the slightest slope, or when restraints fail, they can turn into runaway hazards. With so much weight and momentum, they move with unstoppable force. Security footage shows a coil suddenly rolling loose. Workers notice, but one instinctively steps forward, reaching out as if to stop it. In an instant, the runaway steel shows how futile human effort is. Its massive weight and momentum turn a simple slip into an unstoppable force. Never, ever try to stop a rolling load by hand. A steel coil, pipe, or cylinder carries more momentum than any person can withstand. The only safe response is to get out of its path and let engineered barriers, wedges, or containment systems do the stopping. In a workshop full of sparks and steel, one grinder met the wrong drum, and in seconds, it erupted. The workshop floor was crowded with tools, cylinders, and equipment. In the center, a blue steel drum had been rolled into place. A worker lowered his grinder onto its surface, sparks flying. From the outside, the drum looked ordinary, just another container waiting to be cut open. But inside, invisible fumes lingered, unseen and untested. As the grinder bit into the steel, the heat met trapped vapors. In an instant, the drum ignited. A flash of flame burst outward, filling the space with heat and light. The heavy barrel jolted as smoke spread across the workshop, transforming what seemed like routine, cutting into a sudden and dangerous emergency. Never ever weld, grind, or cut into a closed drum unless it has been properly cleaned and tested. Even when they appear empty, drums can trap vapors that ignite the moment sparks touch them. On a busy factory floor, a pile of strips fed into a roller machine suddenly turns from routine work into a near disaster. This was a textile plant where long strips of material needed to be pushed into the rollers for processing. Two workers stood side by side, feeding the tangled lengths in. To them, it felt like everyday work. Grab the strips, straighten them out, and keep production moving. But right beside them, the rollers turned constantly, designed to pull in whatever touched their grip. As the two men handled the bundle, the fabric twisted and caught in the rollers. In an instant, the pull was relentless, threatening to drag everything closer. For a moment, it looked like control was lost, but the coworker reacted instantly, hitting the emergency stop button just in time. The intervention turned a near disaster into a narrow escape. Never ever feed material into a roller with bare hands and loose fabric unguarded. These machines are relentless. The moment fabric gets caught, it becomes a rope pulling anything in its path. Guarding, push tools, and emergency stops exist for a reason, to ensure that workers never have to rely on luck or another person's quick reflexes to survive. On a quiet residential street, a towering utility ladder rests dangerously on power lines, its balance on the edge of collapse. A crew positions a tall extension ladder on overhead power lines, cars parked close on either side. With no stabilizers or secured footing, the structure rests only on their grip. The narrow street and tangled cables create an unforgiving backdrop where one slip could trigger disaster. The ladder suddenly tilts forward, its weight slipping beyond the worker's control. In seconds, the tall frame tips into the street, pulling against overhead lines and crashing down across parked cars. The sharp clang of metal on pavement echoes through the block as control vanishes, leaving the crew scrambling in confusion. Never ever attempt to raise or maneuver a heavy ladder near power lines without mechanical assistance, stabilization devices, and a clear exclusion zone. On a steep hillside, a backhoe works dangerously close to the edge until the ground gives way. It's a routine construction day on a narrow dirt road cut into the hillside. The machine operator is using the backhoe to level the soil, pushing loads of earth towards the edge. To an untrained eye, it looks like just another day's work. But beneath the machine's heavy tires, the slope is soft, unstable, and giving way little by little. As the operator continues working, the backhoe inches closer to the drop. Suddenly, the soil beneath gives way. In seconds, the slope collapses and the massive machine tips forward, tumbling out of control. What looked like solid ground reveals itself as a hidden trap, showing how quickly stability can vanish on unstable terrain. Never ever operate heavy machinery close to the edge of unstable ground without barriers, proper reinforcement, and ground stability checks. The weight of the machine will always win against a weak slope. During a training, a helicopter begins to taxi. Suddenly, it jerks sideways, tips, and shatters into flying debris. This wasn't combat, it was controlled training, but helicopters demand perfect balance. One fault, one missed check, and stability is gone. Moments after moving, something failed. A lock left unsecured or a subtle imbalance. The helicopter rocked violently, tilting beyond recovery. In seconds, stability gave way, and the machine toppled across the pad, scattering debris and halting the exercise instantly. Pre-flight checks aren't paperwork. They're survival. Every bolt, lock, and rotor setting must be verified. Helicopters don't forgive shortcuts. The margin for error is seconds. Inside a textile mill, the machines roared until one erupted in a sudden storm of steam. Rows of dying vessels rumbled as heat and mist filled the air. Workers pushed carts across the slick floor, moving soaked fabric from one machine to the next. Machine 3 discharged its steaming load into a bin, and routine tasks pressed forward under the constant haze of pressure. Inside the chamber, pressure built past its limit, and the relief system failed to respond. In an instant, the vessel vented with explosive force, filling the hull with a dense white cloud. Visibility vanished as steam surged outward, and routine work dissolved into chaos. Pressurized vessels must never be pushed beyond their rated limits. Every chamber requires functional relief valves, routine inspections, and strict maintenance. When safety systems fail or are bypassed, pressure becomes unstoppable, and even a routine cycle can turn deadly in seconds. In a steel plant, a ladle of molten metal tips, and chaos erupts in seconds. Scattered across the floor, the steady rhythm of work collapsed into confusion, proving how quickly imbalance can unleash danger. Never ever move molten metal without secure rigging and clear exclusion zones. One slip of a ladle can unleash energy no worker can withstand. On a cramped loading bay, a pane of glass tips, turning routine work into sudden danger. Two workers unload tall glass sheets from a truck in a narrow passage. With no suction lifters or restraints, the panels rest loosely on edge. Bare hands and hurried movements replace protective gear and safe handling tools. One pane shifts suddenly, tilting against the stack. The weight tips forward, and in an instant, glass panels topple and shatter across the confined alley. The sound of breaking glass echoes sharply as the fragments scatter, filling the narrow passage with chaos. What looked like a routine unload collapses into a dangerous mess of falling panels. Never ever handle or unload large glass panels without securing systems, mechanical aids, and protective gear, because glass under stress can transform into a lethal hazard. On a busy loading yard, one truck moves forward, and suddenly the entire site turns into chaos. It's early morning at a timber yard. Workers are unloading long logs from a flatbed truck. The yard is cramped, barely enough room for one truck to maneuver. The white flatbed truck is loaded heavy, and men are even standing on it, shifting logs into position. But in this tight, crowded space, one movement changes everything. The white truck begins to creep forward on its own. One worker rushes in front, pressing his hands against the grill in a frantic attempt to stop it. But the loaded vehicle doesn't slow. It surges ahead, pushing dangerously close to the wall as others shout warnings. In an instant, the yard erupts in chaos as the runaway truck barrels forward, its weight unstoppable once in motion. Never rely on human strength against a moving vehicle. In loading zones, trucks must always be secured, brakes engaged, wheels chocked, and cabs locked. A rolling truck can't be stopped by hands, only by prevention. In a factory where robotic arms move steel with relentless precision, one step into their work zone can turn deadly. This is a modern industrial line, humming with automation. Sheets of metal are stacked, transferred, and pressed by robotic manipulators. The machines don't hesitate, they don't pause, and they don't forgive. Workers are meant to observe from a safe distance, never to intrude on their programmed cycle. But then, a worker in a red helmet steps directly into the robot's operating range. The arm pivots to grab the next sheet, blind to his presence. In a sweeping motion, the gripper surges forward, its programmed task colliding with human movement. In an instant, what should have been a routine cycle turns into a reminder of how unforgiving automation can be. Never ever enter the operating zone of an active robotic arm. Robots do not see you, do not sense hesitation, and will not stop unless safeguards are engaged. On a high-rise site, a crane shifts and the entire build comes to a halt. Workers are stationed around a 23rd floor building project, the crane towering above as it handles lifts with steady rhythm. Nearby, the city carries on, with pedestrians and residents moving as usual. From the outside, the operation looks routine with no sign of the risk overhead. The crane shifts off balance, its frame beginning to lean. A tremor ripples through the site as the structure wavers, forcing work to stop immediately. In moments, the instability is clear to everyone nearby, a stark reminder of how fragile crane balance can be once lost. Never ever overlook crane stability. Once balance is lost, even the strongest structure cannot recover. In heavy rolling, one misroll is all it takes to break the rhythm of the line. On the mill floor, heated steel is guided into rollers designed to shape and stretch it. Operators focus on speed and precision because the rolling line runs under immense force and must stay perfectly aligned. But when a bar slips from its guide or enters off-center, the entire flow of the process begins to shift. The misroll disrupts the line, throwing the rollers out of balance. The steel veers off its guided path, shifting unpredictably through the system. What should have been a smooth flow is now interrupted, forcing the mill to halt and recover. Never, ever overlook alignment in a rolling mill. Even a small misfeed under heavy force can transform controlled rolling into an unpredictable hazard. Precision is protection. Guides, monitoring, and strict alignment checks are not optional. They are what keep the rolling line safe and steady. At a busy loading dock, one missed break turns routine unloading into sudden chaos. A truck is backed up to the dock, doors open, and lift gate lowered. A worker pushes a pallet jack forward, shifting the load deeper inside. Everything appears steady, but the brakes were never engaged, leaving the vehicle unsecured. As unloading continues, the unsecured truck shifts unexpectedly at the dock. The alignment moves out of place, creating sudden instability and halting the routine task. What seemed steady seconds before now exposes a preventable hazard. Never, ever unload a truck without setting the brakes. An unsecured vehicle can move at any moment, transforming a routine task into a dangerous situation. In the heavy silence of the workshop, one massive lift turned into a catastrophic drop. This was inside a locomotive repair facility where multi-ton diesel generators were being moved with an overhead crane. The machines here are colossal. Steel frames, thick cables, and the constant hum of mechanical work filling the air. Workers trusted the crane system daily. It was the backbone of moving these enormous engines across the bay. But then, in a single moment, trust in the system collapsed. The crane cables holding the generator strained under the weight. The tension built, the hooks shuddered, and without warning, the crane cables gave way. In seconds, the lift zone turned chaotic as tons of steel moved with unstoppable momentum. Never ever trust aging or uninspected lifting equipment with loads of this magnitude. Overhead cranes must be inspected, maintained, and tested relentlessly, because one cable failure is all it takes to bring down a machine weighing several tons. The lesson here is brutally clear. Inspect every cable, every shackle, every lifting point before the load ever leaves the ground. Don't forget to share what you learned today in the comments. Your insight could save a life. Take care.